Hello, this is Anna, and you're listening to the Broom Radio. Um, Happy Memorial Day. Today is Memorial Day in the United States. I don't know if anyone celebrated that who's sitting in this container right now, but
It's not Memorial
that's
Day in
really,
Australia.
it's not Memorial Day in Australia.
Not
I
really.
didn't really celebrate. Um, let's
Yeah,
see,
we
it's
had a
Monday. Sorry, go ahead.
we had a chat we had a chat about like how it feels kind of gauche to celebrate Memorial Day for a lot of young Americans.
Yeah, yes, we did. Um, Okay, so today is Monday. It's May 27th, 2024. Um, and in today's container, I'm going to be interviewing Nobu. And if
Yay.
yay! And if you've
I
listened
don't
to the podcast, sorry, go ahead.
ask because I don't talk enough in the broom, so that's why we did this.
I was gonna say, if you've listened to the podcast before, you probably know who Nobu is. He's the
And
guy who does wine like this.
right, which is also kind of like what this container is about.
A little bit, but I feel like maybe I'm hoping it'll be like a little bit of a different perspective,
Right.
hopefully.
Yeah. Like not
That's
like
like
not the alien guy.
no, but I feel like it'll just I mean, I feel like it's different like to hear someone talking from their own perspective and then like hearing them be interviewed, you
Well,
know?
I do try to talk from my own perspective and why am I like this, but it's usually
Yes.
about aliens.
um so yeah, like maybe this will give people some like I don't know, just like some context.
Yeah,
Um
like we can like scope
yeah.
it down to me talking about like one alien, which is like me, instead of aliens in general.
I love that.
So
Um,
when did you come down to Earth?
Also, I was hoping, like, before we, like, really get into the questions, if you could sort of, like, help give some context as to, like, how this container came to be and, like, its relationship to
Hmm.
some containers that you produced a little while back called Dojo. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, I participated in Dojo a couple times. So yeah, I wanted to um, give you a chance to like weave that into this if you want.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick.
Or not, I don't
Well,
care.
well. I mean, basically, I have a lineage space called 000, which, like each of those zeros, I kind of see like eggs because, I think one time during like a Mercury-Uranus opposition when I was living in upstate New York, I was like, I'd signed up to be like the park supervisor, which meant that I had to like make sure people got out of it when it was, the sun was setting, which is very auspicious because the park was called Burger Hill. And like sunset's kind of like a magical time. I would say like the sun becomes very red. So it's kind of like you get that red light therapy. And it's
Mm.
kind of it's quite romantic as well. So it's a good time to be romantic because all your mitochondria get stimulated. And they're like, yeah.
Don't they call that the golden hour too? Well, I know
Yeah.
photographers call that the golden hour.
Yeah, I think golden hour might be a little bit before when it's still golden before it becomes
You're
red.
right.
But maybe
Absolutely right.
maybe it includes the red, but which also gets the film goers going because the red light therapy hits their mitochondria and they're like, "Girl, I wanna pop, I wanna, I wanna pop your corn." Um, but anyway, I was like doing this like ritual, and I was like channeling as you do, and then at the very end, I said the word "yaitse," which means eggs
Wait,
in
will you say it again? I didn't hear it.
y- yaitse.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, like yaitse is like egg, and
Okay.
yaite, I think is like the plural. And I looked up the etymology as you do, and it looked like it was like Proto-Slavic, and it kind of came from like I want to say like Germanic scripts for like the word command, which is very interesting to me because I was like, eggs and genetic material are kind of like command, right? Like you can imagine like the
How do you
great
figure?
the great software engineer in the sky punching keys into a terminal and being like, like your genetic material says you're going to be attracted to these people and you're going to look like this. Press enter, and then the computer is like thinking, and then it's like maktub, and it like writes out like the script for your life to an extent, right? Because it also has to interact with the commands of other people's genetic material. But that's kind of where I got this sense that like 000 seeds of life, seeds of life, seeds of seeds of seeds of life was going to be a lineage space based on seeding life again, because I feel like our realm is sort of like genetically predestined to extinguish itself.
Oof.
Um, and like, so I feel like you'll see, like, why am I like this? Also used to be like a 000 only offering, and then it kind of like
Mhm.
you could say like germinated or became like so it was like incubated in the cosmic womb of
Mhm.
the 000 lineage space, and then it became an infant, and then it was like, and then it kind of came out into the world, and we started publishing a podcast. And why am I like this is like one of the regular series episodes. There's also field tuning and archetypal hour, which is actually 90 minutes, because I guess you could say that baby is a little bit delayed. So it got big in the womb, and then the head was too big, so they had to dilate, and then they wanted a natural birth, but and then like Adam was trying to squeeze it out in like a swimming pool or something, and then the doula was like, "Oh, this is beyond my pay grade," and then it came out 9 pounds instead of 6, um, with a very big head, very very head mind focused. Whereas I'd say field tuning and why am I like this a bit more like I want to say mystical.
What about
Uh,
dojo? Were you
oh
getting to
yeah,
that?
so Dojo, I think came after Why Am I Like This? It was like my second baby,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I really wanted. So I'm like an energy worker, or an exorcist, or a metaphysical gardener, or a metaphysical doctor, or whatever. And it's like I was just like doing all this work on Twitter, and people weren't getting it, and I was like, okay. I mean, Why Am I Like This was sort of meant to be like that too, where it's just like, okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just ask me fucking questions. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Um, if we're not, then I'm in
You want to just
trouble.
like you want to say like your top 3 swear words just to like get it out, just like
Fuck, fuck, and fuck.
put put the oven on self cleaning mode a little bit.
And
What?
fucking
All right. Fuck. Yeah. So like I was just like, ask me some fucking questions if you don't get what I'm doing, and then I'll like try to answer them. And if they're too long, the answers are too long, I'll put them into like a recording, and they end up usually being like 45 minutes to an hour because I just wanted people to get what was happening. Because they'd be
Mhm.
like, you know how people do on Twitter. I'm still talking about why am I like this. I'll talk about Dojo eventually. I did say this was going to be short, but
He can't be
like
contained.
I, I allowed you to swear 3 times, so I was like, maybe I can talk a bit longer every time. Like every time Anna says "fuck," I get another like minute or so. Anyway, so people on Twitter they'll be like, "Oh, like, should I start like a README doc, like, but like for dating me?" And they'll be like, I'll like read their field, and I'll kind of like understand the underlying motivations of why they want to date and why they want to start a date me doc, or why they think someone will click on a Google Docs link just to date them, so swiping left or something. And then I'll give them an answer, and they're like, "Whoa, like." I had to fall asleep right after I read your reply. And I'll be like, yeah, that's energy work. And I'm like, what's energy work? And I'll be like, well, that's a good question. can I bring that into the container of why am I like this? Because I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of this work is unseen, right? I feel like
Yeah.
in like mainstream consciousness, people are kind of like more aware now of like the unseen labor which happens in families and in
Mm.
organizations. I remember reading a New York Times article which said that like 80% of the communication within an organization is like carried out by like less than 20% of the people, and like I think it's something like 79% of it's like not recognized, right? And that's just like any
Yeah.
person in any body in any organization. But then in families, typically like before the 1970s, like men were out of the house, like drilling things, doing man stuff. And then like the women were at home taking care of the kids and making sure that the kids were getting like that kind of juicy co-regulation and uh learning about the world, learning how to cook, learning how to change their underpants and like brush their teeth and stuff. That's a lot of work, right? Like, are there any parents in the chat? I know there are, but I'm just asking, just to be polite. Are there any parents listening live? Well, I'll say like, yeah, I see someone typing now. I feel like I had a dream about family, and I'm
Yay.
not gonna like, I don't want to project on anybody's like family life, but like, I think like having kids is really hard. I think it used to be much more communal. I think nowadays it's very like nuclear family oriented, and it's even more work actually. And then now you have like both men and women and like all parents working. There's even less time unless people get to work at home, but still it's a lot of work to work at your day job and then also take care of children. And consequentially, because of like the lopsidedness of income, and there's like a whole lot more there, but like that's called women's labor. So people understand that it's work. And I'd say like energy work is a lot of the same stuff, plus some like extra gnostic, esoteric stuff. But then people don't see it. So I was like, okay, why am I like this? I'm going to shed some light on this. And then I was like, okay, that's not working. But I knew all these other like energy workers, spirit workers, IFS therapists, body workers, etc., coaches, secular psychotherapists who also felt like no one got their work. And I was like, okay, well, maybe if I sit in a dentist chair and then you do energy work with me and then we record it and we post it on YouTube and on Twitter and stuff, then people
Mm.
will see what it's like. And it was like dojo because I feel like energy work is often like fighting, right? Like there's this book that came out called The Others Within Us, which has been reviewed by a guy called Scott Alexander, who people actually listen to, unlike me. And he quotes he quotes some passages. It's basically about IFS and this concept in IFS, which is like demons. And people who are listening might be like, oh, like I've heard about demons before IFS. And I'd be like, yeah, because IFS basically borrows heavily from shamanic traditions. But
Mm.
everybody's, for some reason, people are like, what the fuck, like demons? And it's just like, yo, like you go to any fucking country, there's like demon hunting, demon killing rituals, right? Like I talked to my dad's girlfriend, and he's like, yeah, one of my earliest memories is going back to Sicilia, and then like going past the church, and they're like strapping down some possessed person, and like like the padre was like burning incense in its face and shit, and then they're like screaming, and they're like, oh my god, that's so crazy. Or like Taoist sages are known as exorcists. I don't think Buddhists really exercise because they're too busy staring at walls and not using their testicles. I think like
Wait a minute,
you
wait a
know
minute, wait a minute.
there are like shamanic traditions of East Asia, Northeast, like the Bering Strait, South America, Central America, Nawals. Even theosophers even do exorcisms, right? So it's like it's there, but I think people are scared of demons. So they don't have like the courage to look at those traditions.
I have a question. Why do you think people are scared of demons?
I
Good
think there's a
question.
film called The Exorcist, and there's like really scary staircase in the back of a building in DC, and people associate demons with that. And then that staircase kind of looks
Mhm.
like the staircase in like the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker, and he's like dancing all kind of weird. So people are like, oh, Exorcist like Joaquin Phoenix.
Which is like a GIF that you use often.
It's not my fault. It was Joaquin Phoenix's fault. Um, but there's also Heath Ledger, legendarily portrayed the Joker or the Riddler. I
Oh,
forget
that's
because
what
they.
I was thinking of, sorry.
Yeah, there's also one where like if I say something, I can tell it's going to be spicy. Like Heath Ledger's in jail and he's just like lizard tongue.
Yeah, that
I
one, that
just
was what I was
I got
thinking of.
loaded up. It's like, whoops, did I say a thing? And of
That
course, it
one.
was like Jack Nicholson. I think Jack Nicholson was the Riddler, but I feel like they're both like embodiments of the trickster archetype, right? Well, he might have been the Joker too, but he wears lipstick. He's a
Do you feel
man,
like
and people
yeah.
don't really like it when men wear lipstick. I think because they're like not in touch with their own femininity, which is a big problem. Um, but not us, not in the broom. We're all very in touch with all sides of our personalities and our egos and our super egos and our ids. But so you know, yeah, demons. Like basically, Scott Alexander wrote this review, and then some people actually read it. Other people just like talk about it as if they read it, or they read it, but their eyes are just moving over the words, but they're not embodying it, and they're like demons. And now everyone's talking about demons, and like one of the pull quotes that he comes out with is like how this practitioner is talking about how many of his colleagues will be like talking to somebody, and then sometimes the demons come out and they get physically attacked by them. And I was just like, I know everyone's talking about this, but I'm not going to read it because this is just like an everyday experience for me. Like every day when I'm talking to people, their demons come out and try and bite and scratch me, and I'm just like, wow. And then I'm like, why would I read about that? It's like if I was like, you wouldn't read a book where it was just like, so I woke up and I brushed my teeth and I ran a comb through my hair and I decided to catch the bus like I do every day. And I walked down the street and I saw some golf balls and I kicked them and then they hit each other. Like that sounds more entertaining than this book, to be honest with me.
So what you're
And
saying is this is just like your everyday.
yeah, and like, this is kind of what I was hoping that people would see in dojo containers, because like, I had Maya
Mm,
like talking to me, and like some of my demons came out and said some stuff which was untrue, which is often what demons do. They tell lies to us to keep us locked in samsara.
interesting.
I don't know, one of those S's is one of those special S's with a dot on top or underneath. So it's like Shamshara or Samshara or Shamsara or something like that. But, they keep us locked in like these patterns of behavior which are not very playful and kind of keep us uh, in these roles as minions in this like collective illusion. And I was kind of hoping that people would see these things and be like, oh, okay, that's like my mom, or be like, that's me when I'm talking to Anna,
Mhm.
or like and then they'd be like, oh, so it's actually work. Oh, it's actually like demons. Oh, it's actually like something which like people do professionally and very well.
Mm.
Um, and then sometimes I'm thinking right now of the episode. I think it was with like Hoda and Lena, where like there was an imaginal exercise, and I felt like a lot of
Also so
demons
good.
were released around time. And then we
Yes.
also get to see like many different traditions of spiritual practice. You get to see how
Yeah.
many people came to be initiated in them, and uh, that was originally in 000, but not many people are seeing it because people are scared of me. So they don't like sign up for 000, even when I invite like young and pretty friends onto it, and not so
Oh
young
god.
and pretty, or not so pretty and not so young, or whatever. Like I tried everybody. Even people that like normally like listen to some of these people are too scared, and so I made that public. So again, like this was like gestated in my womb, and
Yeah.
then you could say it was like a monozygomatic twin because there's always two people. And then it came out on the Broom Radio, and I haven't done it for a while because we've been talking about generalizing it into an interview series where we talk with like celebrities and politicians and musicians and
Yeah.
artists, because a lot of these people are basically spiritual practitioners too, right? Because a lot of their work
Yes.
involves sort of like going toe to toe with the beast of the collective illusion in some capacity, usually a more public capacity than mine. And
Yeah.
then saying things, allowing people to comment on it, having beef with one another, you know. And I think it holds space for a lot of other people's demons or their own connections to these demons to come out. And that's why it's called dojo, and that's like the genesis of this container. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear from you, like how you are planning to like steward this container outside of my womb now that you're now that you're slicing the umbilical cord. What are you gonna call it? Does it have a name? Are you gonna
I don't
allow the
know.
baby?
Well,
Does the
we
baby
what was
does the
that?
baby name it? Does the baby name itself?
Well, I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but you had mentioned, like, if I didn't call it Dojo, like, wanting to rename Dojo, but I would want you to keep Dojo as Dojo
Mm.
if you want. So,
Well, I had a dream about like naming babies last night. So,
that's so timely.
what comes up for you when I say the word Artemis?
Artemis?
Yeah, the
I'm
archer.
I'm letting it marinate in my field. I don't know, I like it. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know that's like a god or goddess, right?
Yeah, in the Roman tradition, she's Diana the Huntress.
Okay, yes, yes.
Hoda says hen slash tent mother things.
Um, that's
Call it like
interesting.
it's funny to me that if you break up the word Artemis, it's like art et mis, like art and me and you, or mine actually. It's the
Oh,
plural of it's like my art or something.
yeah, I also, I remember, like, a couple months ago, or
Hmm.
maybe it was, like, this winter, I was reading about Diana the Huntress
Hmm.
one day, and then on the same day, I saw, like, 3 deer,
Hmm.
and I realized that deer are associated with, Diana. I think
Ugh,
Diana is, like, the Greek equivalent or something of Artemis. Is that
I'm not
correct?
sure.
I don't know.
I think Diana is like the American pronunciation of Diana, which is I think it's like Roman emanation.
Oh, okay.
But the
But
Romans and the Greeks were like, I mean, I guess Diana is also Hellenistic, which is Greek. But the Greek goddess name was Artemis.
right. But Artemis and basically Artemis and Diana are the same.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Or like, yeah, they got kind of smashed together.
right. Yeah, I feel like I do have
Mm.
a connection. Even though usually yeah, usually I'm, like, not the biggest fan of, like, Greco-Roman
Yeah, neither am
gods or goddesses, but, like, I feel like she gets a pass for me.
I. Okay. Well, it's not really a name for a container, but maybe we can workshop that a little bit more on that theme. We can like a
I
mood
like
board.
that. I like that you threw it in the hat. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, mood board. I love that.
But apart from the name, like, what are you gonna have this baby do? Is it
I
gonna
was
become an artist, or is it gonna become a fireman?
I mean, I feel like the reason why I decided to, like, pick up the baton with this was because, like, um, I mean, I've always just really loved talking to people. It's, like, kind of
Hmm.
it's really that simple for me, like, I just love talking to people and, like, especially one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I find it difficult to, like, facilitate, like, a group container, but I feel like
Mm.
where I feel most comfortable is just one-on-one with people, and,
Mm.
and then, yeah, I feel like you had mentioned, um, to me like, "Oh, I feel like you're already interviewing people." And then I was like, "Oh, I think that's true."
Right. Because you're
So,
talking to Boone, you talk to like Psychonaut,
yeah, I talked to a couple other members of the pot recently.
Ahmed. You talk to Ahmed, or was that Julie?
No, that was yeah, that was Julie. Um,
Alright.
so yeah, it sort of just seemed like the most natural
Hmm.
the most natural way to go. Like it
Who
wouldn't.
else would you like to talk to?
Ooh, I don't even know if well, first of all, I wanna interview I wanna spotlight, like, all of the other tenders of the broom.
All right. So who's that?
So, that's the people who are in this other people who are in this container listening live, who are tenders, that would be Lexi
For the
and
people who can't.
and
Yeah, go on.
Hoda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm on it, I got it. Um, and then,
Craig. You're gonna interview Craig.
I'll Craig, the bot who records our containers. Then that would be Adam, Podrock. These are all of the other tenders of the broom, and Julie. Is that everybody?
Yeah, would Jess like to be interviewed? You can throw
Yeah,
your
of
hat in the ring.
course. I could interview Jess if they want me to.
We probably interview basically anyone who wants to be interviewed, I reckon.
Yeah, and I feel like yeah, there's so many people that I would like to interview, like especially within the realm of like artists.
What kind of artists would you like to interview? Or which artist?
Like I feel like I don't want to say any names out loud right now.
How how are they gonna know that you
I'm
want to
feeling
interview
like
them?
protective of my vision.
All right. Well, I'm gonna interview my sister because she's an artist.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay. Yeah, I would like to interview like my cousins,
What's your cousin's name?
Cameron. Shout out to Cameron if you're
Cameron.
listening. Yeah, like
You better be listening, Cameron. You better be listening.
I would
Your
love to
cousin.
interview my family, like some of my family. Like I'm just thinking about like I would love to interview my uncle who's like a music theory professor. Like that would be a fucking
You,
awesome interview.
you could ask me about Frank Ocean and like tripping over your 6-inch stilettos and you're putting your panties on in the mirror. Is that an experience you've had, Virgil? Uncle Virgil? Is it Virgil?
Lord. Hoda's
Have
saying
you
that
ever?
she wants to interview her dad. I would
Uh,
fucking love that.
I've
Yeah.
interviewed your dad in my dreams. Hold on.
What did y'all talk about?
I mean, he came and picked me up in like a gold caddy, and then I
Bruh,
guess we were driving around in Southeast Africa or something.
why did I get the image of the MIA Bad Girls video and she's like tipped on the top of the car?
Well, he's a quite safe driver, so it's mostly like on four wheels. But we were carrying some buried treasure, Somalian pirates loot.
Wow.
That was cool. So that was cool. Yeah, I'd like to interview some like people outside of the broom too, like
Yes.
people who are probably like reachable on Twitter and Instagram and stuff.
Mhm.
And then maybe interview some people who would pay people to operate their social media.
Ooh.
Ooh, Claudia wants to interview Kiki Mansi. I want to interview Björk.
Who?
Björk. I'm,
Bjork. Holy
yeah, I'm sorry.
shit. Oh my
I'm
god.
I'm sorry, Björk.
Bjork. Did you mean?
Björk. Did you mean General Cells?
Oh my god.
Orange
Talk about
chicken?
she is like the OG alien.
She is.
I
I'd like to
fucking
be
love
like, why did you decide to come to Earth? It's crazy here.
her.
I, I
Seriously.
was hoping you could elaborate on why you came to Earth because I often wonder why I'm on Earth because they don't seem to like me very much here. So,
Why
what's
did
your?
you come to Earth, Nobu?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I have some ideas, but
Since
I'm
this
not.
is an interview with you,
Yeah, I have some ideas, but like I have to clarify that like it's all gnostic, right? Like it's all ideas that I've gotten from meditating and like bas basically just meditating. Like no external body has told me or given me like an itinerary.
that'd
Uh,
be nice.
it would be nice because I'd probably be late, but you know, like my mom, if I talk to like my family about why they gave birth to me, it's a little bit not very convincing. Like, why did you decide to have me? I feel like Kanye is like the most honest on this. And he's just like, we was just practicing, then one day your ass bust through the packaging. You know what though? You're my favorite accident. Like he just like the condom fell off. Um, but I'll say like
I'm still waiting for your answer.
what my mom was just like, that's what people did. And she'd had a couple of miscarriages.
Right.
So in some traditions, they would say that I have like multiple souls attached to my body, which registers. I think it makes sense.
Whoa.
Mostly
Whoa.
like East Asian traditions that no one really cares to learn properly. But yeah,
Wait,
they say
can I
that.
pause you for a second? Because I want to
Mm,
ask about that.
yeah, go for it.
So, you're saying in some East Asian traditions, if a woman has had miscarriages and then gives birth, then the child who she's given birth to has multiple souls attached to them.
Yeah, that's not what I said, but that is an accurate that is an accurate re-articulation of what I said. I would
Okay.
say. I mean, I would say that even if they don't give birth to a child, then those souls are just kind of hanging around in the trunk.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anyway, you were saying that like resonates in your experience. Would you like to say more?
Yeah. And then, I haven't asked my dad about it because I only asked him questions about his work because those are the only questions he really knows how to answer. Which is not, I don't think it was like necessarily part of his business as like an architect and a lift operator to give birth to an alien. So that's not really like a question I've tried asking him, but I should ask him. Maybe I'll interview him and I'll be like, "Why did you
Yeah, that'd be cool.
decide to impregnate my mother after she failed you
I would
twice?" I'm just fucking around.
I would love
It's
to hold
definitely.
space for you to ask that question.
I don't know if he would come on to like a recording, but I can ask him and I can like type it up or something. But
Yeah.
yeah. So, they don't really have good answers. And then I think like about, I don't think most people have kids and they're like, okay, this is like why this is why I'm creating a vessel for this soul to come to Earth. Because usually they don't really know what the nature of the soul of that person's going to be, right? I mean, please disagree.
I
I'd say
mean,
most parents don't know their children very well
I would agree with that.
until their children become adults and they're like, you know what? I'm actually like this. Um, but so, I would say like the contents of like the portal through which souls come is mostly shaped by like natal astrology, right? Or you
Okay.
could say that like that the souls are kind of like unexpressed, sort of like stem cells, until
Mhm.
the baby takes its first breath. Again, according to East Asian traditions, they say your first breath, you're imprinted by the ether that's available in the air.
Right.
Um, and then, so you could imagine that, like, if there were two souls just bouncing around in my mom's womb, and then when her and my father created the soul fire. In the tradition of the Walkers of Bluestone, they say that you create a fire with your sexual energy. Like, like one body
Mm.
creates a fire, the second person creates a fire, or like, one of them creates a spark, the other one has the wood that creates a fire that protects the heart. And then through the heart space, which is created by the portal of those two fires, a soul comes through. And that soul is
Oh,
just like a virgin soul, right? It doesn't have any imprinting.
mhm.
And then when it's like that's the conception time, and then when it comes out, it's like wah, and then like there's like a song in the universe, and that song has many different parts to it, and there's a sound which comes from all those parts being played, and then that calls like various different soul blueprints, right? So I wouldn't say that everybody who's born at the same time has the same soul. I would say it's just like if you open up the gates of the Michael Jackson concert, you're probably going to see people from New Jersey. You're going to see people who flew in from East Europe. You're going to see some people from Long Island. You're going to see lots of different people coming through. So, like, lots of different soul prints can come through. But then, like, depending on where you are on Earth, there's also a different orientation to the song, right? So if you're listening to a song that's being played on a stage and you're like in the back, it's going to sound different to when you're in the front or right of stage or left of stage. So that also informs the print. But then, at some point you're going to hear something that's going to inform what kind of souls can come through. And then you're probably going to get one of those souls. But if you have like three souls and they all take a breath of that baby at the first time, then you're going to get three prints, which is why I think many people end up with like multiple souls, um, multiple prints. Of course, the prints are very compatible because you're taking a breath at the same time. Does that make sense?
So what does it mean to have multiple souls
Well, it's just kind of like,
to you?
like, I don't know, like, what's a good example? If you had like three vouchers and you went to McDonald's, you get three meals.
Do you feel like you have, like,
Yeah,
mm,
I'd say
more,
like
like
what's
go
up?
on.
I was gonna say one of my souls is more like mercurial, like Fatah,
Uh-huh.
like an Egyptian goddess. Another
Okay.
soul is more like Sekhmet, and
Yeah.
then another soul was probably more like Hathor.
Mhm.
They all came through.
At the same time.
Yeah, ordered a McChicken meal. I ordered a Big Mac, and then I ordered a what's a Sekhmet meal? Does anybody have an idea what Sekhmet should be like? The apple pie, maybe? Because she's got like not really.
I
She's
feel like maybe Hoda would have. Oh, that's great, Hoda. Yes.
cherry cherry pie, like but like as an attachment to like a bacon double cheeseburger or something. Because she's got like everything, right? Like we had this
The granola
exegesis of
crust. Mhm.
the goddess energy of Isis and Hathor and Sekhmet. And
Yeah.
like I think like all of those goddesses are sort of part of like the Sekhmet meal deal. So
She's
I got
upper
I got
cheese and main
I,
course.
yeah, I got like a lot of goddess energy, and then I got like a little bird who's like Fatah.
Do you feel like that relates to the
Spicy McChicken.
do you feel like the bird relates to the, parrot, the red star, green cloud parrot?
Yeah, but like that parrot's not really like I feel like it's more like a kind of like cat bird fish, like a Furby with scales or something. That's the con-
Okay, so now that I've, like, weaved in red star, green cloud, I'm gonna just keep going with that,
Mhm. But
because
I
I
didn't
wanted
tell
to
you
a
why I ordered these meals.
oh,
I
goodness,
was
okay, yes. Go
well,
on.
well, I was very hungry, and I was high. You have to be high to order that much food, and I regret it because I can't seem to get it out of my system.
Wow.
I'm gonna turn the light on because it's very rainy here and it's making me sleepy.
Oh my gosh, it's raining here too, it's, like, pouring.
Yeah, yeah, it's pouring. Anyway, so that's why I was high and I had some money. So I ordered all these meals. I figured I'd like share it with the
Yeah.
universe.
You had money to blow, would you say?
If I managed to make it back from the McDonald's in my whip, I was gonna share it in the universe. Bring back some food for the homies.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
To me.
it's all right. I mean, like, I got pulled over by the cops, falling asleep at a stop sign, perhaps, but it's definitely not easy, right? Ask Bjork if she comes onto the podcast. It's not easy.
What is hard about it?
um, I think like mostly like with that much like with that much McDonald's, you have like a special connection, and I don't think most people have that much McDonald's, and they don't get it.
I'm
So
a
like
little
you know,
confused what McDonald's is in this metaphor. You're talking about
we've been
yes.
we've only been talking about McDonald's for like 10 minutes.
I know, but I lost the thread a little bit. I would
Well, it's
love if
like
you could connect
I
it
would
back.
say it's like Sky Ancestral Karma.
Okay, thank you.
It's like all of these meals are kind of like karmic fuel.
Gotcha.
And then you eat the karmic fuel and it produces karma, right? But you need fuel to live. You need
Mhm.
karma. You can't get into this matrix without, needing to take a shit. But I'd say that like, um, it helps if other people can share the meal with you. And
Mm,
it's very hard for people to share a spicy McChicken with you because most people are not into spicy food, even if a spicy McDonald's meal is not very spicy. We are sponsored by McDonald's, by the way. A weird purple guy reached out to me on Twitter. He was like, "I really like your content. I'm gonna sponsor you." I don't know
so
what I don't know
Lexi,
what his I don't know what his name is. He's just weird and purple.
so Lexi's saying that this reminds her of collaborative refinement, what you're saying.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think it helps if people can like help you refine your karma, and you can help them refine their karma. But if they can't understand anything about your karma because they tend to eat cornflakes, then they can't really help you digest McDonald's, right?
Mm. Mm,
They're mostly
yeah.
like huffing Fruit Loops dust or something because they're children. They're not ready to digest adult food.
Well, I feel like it's interesting because I did like sit down with a list of questions. Like I wrote a list of questions for you before this,
Mm,
and one
how,
of them
how
was
considerate.
one of them was about like what the role of like collaboration is in your work. So I feel like you kind of answered it, which is great. I don't
Mm,
really have to ask really.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's very hard for us to see our shadows until we put them out into the world,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Because usually, if we don't put out anything into the world, then we keep our shadows to ourselves. And then when we put stuff out into the world, it's like the shadow shows up because it's blocking the light. But then we have to put it out into the world to see that. And if other people can't see your light, which is a very common experience for me,
Mhm.
then they can't help you see your shadow. Which is why I'm always like, please disagree, because I'm just like, show me my shadow, and they're just like, huh? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, why would I disagree with you? It's like, oh, you wanted that happy meal. You don't want the spicy McChicken. It's like, well, I'm not that happy because the world sucks, all right? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, since 1970s, we've decimated the biodiversity on our planet, and um, pretty much there'll be like no more life on Earth unless we like quickly change our trajectory as a species. And then people were like, I'm gonna go play Super Mario Party now. And then you're like, wait, I wasn't finished. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think most people are ready for that. So you got to give them the happy meal portion. So be like, you're a conscious creator of your reality. And like, you got to have like a woman in a bikini being like, you just have to tune into your I am present. And then you can make your reality. It's like, happiness is a choice. I'm like, most people are not choosing to be unhappy. You idiot. Just because you got a Wonder Bra and a circle light doesn't mean you're an expert on psychology or that you're qualified to tell people what's wrong with their lives or what they can do to make their lives right. It's like you're just ignoring the whole Gaza thing, just ignoring the Levant, just ignoring Ukraine, just ignoring Burma, you're just ignoring capitalistic hedonism. You're just ignoring conspicuous consumption. You're just ignoring like oil-based economies. You're just ignoring fiat currencies. You're just ignoring entrenched, internalized, and externalized racism. Right? It's just like it's a choice. War is over if you want it. It's like no, you just got out of bed, John Lennon. Yoko Ono is a crackpot. I'm not going to listen to you. Holler,
Oh my
holler,
god.
holler at me when Yoko Ono has the bikini on, and then maybe I'll listen to it.
I can't believe John Lennon said war is over if you want it to be.
It's
What
like
do you
war is over if you can afford to stay in bed, but the moment you step outside of your, Central Park apartment, someone's gonna remind you quick that war is not
right,
over.
right.
You idiot. So yeah,
Rest in peace,
that
John Lennon, though.
that that's why life is hard in this realm because like I feel like if you have the courage to look at it, if you have the courage to look at our reality actually,
Yeah.
then it's actually sucky for everybody. And then if you can continue to look at it, but no one wants to look at it at it with you, unless like you're watching a film or something, so they can pretend it's not real. Then it's very hard to feel like you can be reflected to collaborate and see your
Mm,
shadows so that you can like show your light to the world. And then I would
yeah.
say that it's very hard when other people have shadows, and then you find all these different ways not to like be splattered by their shadow, but even sometimes like name aspects of it or not name it. Um, and then people fucking physically attack you or psychically attack you, like the homie with the IFS books talking about, right? So that's all hard. And then if you
Yeah.
actually want to do anything about it, you need people because we can't feed ourselves, we can't house ourselves, we can't clothe ourselves. This all takes a lot of. We're no longer like hairy, so we get cold. We're no longer hairy, so we get sunburnt. We're no longer in the jungle, so we get sunburnt. There's mosquitoes anyway. So we need help,
Mhm.
right? But then it's very hard to get actual help when people have a different game plan.
Right.
So like most people's game plan is like, oh, I'm gonna go work for like Facebook or Apple or like Alphabet or Amazon or and what's the one that starts with N? Netscape? No, it can't be Netscape. It's too old.
Network Navigator?
that's even that's even older. But like maybe like Nvidia, Google. What starts with an N? Amazon,
I don't know what you're talking
Facebook.
about, but I
You don't know
haven't
what
thought about
Amazon
Network
is?
Navigator in years. No, I know what
You tell
Amazon is.
there has to be an N because if it's just FAAG, that's a bad word. Netflix. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Netflix is saving us from doing an oopsie, saying something very politically incorrect. But most
Oh
people
my
are trying to.
god.
So it's like entertainment, tech, or like logistics, right? Because all these tech companies are basically logistic companies because they're delivering goods to people, even if it's not very good for them. And like most people, that's their game plan, right? I'm gonna work for one of these companies. I'm gonna like be boring and like unhappy, but comfortable. Then I'm gonna have kids, and I'm gonna have no time to take care of them. So I'm gonna pay some like Western, like a Trini mom, or like a like an au pair from like a nice blonde au pair from France or something to move to Brooklyn and get paid very little to take care of my kids, and they're gonna speak croissant or I don't know Trinidadian roti, and I'm gonna pretend I understand it as American English, and I'm gonna call them my child, and then the next generation will hopefully not inhale the planet and sneeze every time they eat something with gluten or nuts, right? So like, if you can't get on board with that game plan, then it's very hard, I think, for people on Earth. Because if you try to do stuff outside of that game plan, it's not very well remunerated. Which is going back to why am I like this in dojo. I was just like, well, if you understand what we do, maybe you can support it. I don't think that's largely worked. So maybe we should call
Do you
this
feel like
we should call this container. Thank you for paying me.
I was gonna ask you, do you feel like it's hard to be able to see the things that you see?
Um, it's effortless, but I just had to like surrender my grasp on everything else. And the surrendering part was difficult because my ego wanted to hang on to it. You know, it's
Would you
like
like would you like to say more about that?
I'll try, but it's like when you're a kid. So like when I was a kid, just to bring it back into my perspective, like I was like
Mhm,
Chinese, Hakka, Malaysian. So like people thought I was Chinese because no one knows what Hakka people are. My parents
mhm.
came and they were both working, and I had like family members take care of me. Like they came over from Malaysia and like yeah, mostly Malaysia, Indonesia maybe, whatever. They came over and like they looked after me so my mom could work, right? Which is typical in my family and maybe like a lot of immigrant families. Immigrant.
Mhm.
But then I went to school and then I was like, well, no one understands shit about me. Um,
Mm.
And then I found out that my mom's been telling everybody that I wanted to stop speaking Hakka at home. But then like my auntie Linda was like, I don't think she would have said that. She's probably just making an excuse because she wants to speak English at home. And also my parents spoke different Hakka because like Hakka is basically like guest people, like they're
Oh,
basically
really?
like gypsies. So it's like imagine if your dad spoke Scottish English and your mom
And
spoke American English, and he
oh,
was like
interesting.
illegible,
I didn't
un
know that.
unintelligible. So like my dad
That's so
speaks like I think he speaks like I forget what they call it. I think they just call it like ket or something, like speaking in like eastern Malaysia. My mom's from like East Malaysia, but slightly more west, a place called Sabah. So they speak, I think they call it Sinan Hakka. So they don't necessarily understand each other. So English made sense to speak at home. And then I think I mostly spoke Hakka because my au pairs or my nannies spoke Hakka. Well, my family members spoke Hakka, which is probably like combination because some of them were from my dad's side and some of them were from my mum's side, I think. So I went to school, didn't understand everybody, and then I guess like we probably just I think I just stopped having nannies. So I just started being like having to learn English at home, but I was learning English from my mum and my dad. Um,
Mhm.
and then, like what they were talking about was work, right? They were talking about like getting a job and having a work job. My mom was an accountant, so I have a lot of accounting background and like an accounting
Mhm.
mindset, which is like, accountants, you can't really afford to miss anything because if you miss
Yeah.
stuff, then you have to go clean it up later, and it's often harder to clean it up when it's been accumulating crust for like a year or whatever. And then my dad is like an architect, and architects work really hard because they're mostly small business owners.
Mhm.
And it takes a very long time to get a client. Like you have to go to all these dinners where like people who have money to spend on designing buildings are, and then you have to convince them that you're trustworthy, that you know how to manage a project, that you can design a building where you can actually open the doors, which is actually harder than most people seem to recognize. Because I've been in many buildings where like they'll just put a toilet next to the door, and you're like, I can't open the door because there's a fucking toilet in the way, but I really need to use the fucking toilet. I'm just like, you should have got an architect, man. Should have got a fucking architect. And they're like, no, I can do it. I just need to go down to Home Depot and buy a toilet. But most people don't want to pay for that. And then we create buildings that take up a lot of environmental resources, and then we have to tear them down because no one can use the toilet. It's just better to be like, hey, let's design this right. Let's hire someone who knows how to use the toilet. Um, Maybe get them to use the toilet um, before we build the rest of the building, even and build the building and manage that project. It's very difficult because building suppliers come from many different places. And you have to manage all that, and you have to make sure it doesn't get stolen. Then you have to build it. Then you have to get you have to get permits. You have to get insurance. So like that was my dad's perspective, right? Which is like very structured, very long term. And then the thing is like you have to get the person who moves into the building to pay you, which is very difficult, which I'm realizing right now is part of my karma because I do a lot of work that people don't pay me for. And my dad's almost gone
Mm.
bankrupt like 3 or 4 times, but he didn't go bankrupt. Like, the advantage of going bankrupt, or what they say, like taking part 10 in Australia, is that you don't have to pay your debts. You're like, I can't pay my debts. But then nobody will lend money to you. So my dad needed to borrow money because he was an immigrant. He didn't just like, he was not like a Rockefeller or a Kennedy. So he had to borrow money from the bank, and in order to do that, he had to be loan worthy. In order to do that, he could not declare bankruptcy, so he had to pay off his debts. So he's just been in the hole, which I think informed a lot
Mm.
of my worldview. Like, in case like you've forgotten the question or anybody else has forgotten the question, it's like, well, why?
I haven't forgotten the question.
Are you sure? Tell me, what's the question?
I'm
Just,
positive.
I'm not quizzing you. I'm just making sure you're still awake.
I'm very awake.
Okay. Well, maybe you can tell me. Well, I'll finish. I'll actually answer the question, and I'd love to hear from you if that's cool.
Okay,
All right. So
sure.
the question is, why is it hard for your ego to surrender, basically?
Right.
And it's like, well, I was incubated, or I was raised in all of this stuff. So I learned my ego was basically programmed to be like, okay, you need to be smart, you need to be structured, you can't let anything go, you have to keep track of everything, and you have to like shake
Mhm.
people up to pay for you. And if they don't pay for your work, then you need to take them to court.
Wow.
You just fucking don't let go because you need to get paid. You got kids to feed, right? So my ego, when it came to these points in my life, like when I had decisions to make, my ego was like, okay, you need to do all this stuff. So I went to a private school, because uh, the public schools at the time, my parents didn't trust them because they were mostly like white people. So I went to a Christian school because my mom grew up in an Anglican school in West Malaysia, which is one of the major differences between my mother's side and my father's side. My father went to like state schools, which are like Malay run, and they don't like Chinese or Hakka people or Indian people or Kadazan people. They only like Malay people. So when he came to Australia, he couldn't go to university. He couldn't go to university in Malaysia. That's why he came to Australia. Whereas my mum came to Australia because her father was also Anglican school, Church of England, and they were like, Australia is going to be a safer place for us to like build a home for our generations, next
Mhm.
generations. So
Mhm.
then when they came here, they were like, okay, let's send Christopher. That's my birth name. Um, let's
Mhm.
send Christopher and his sister to like good religious schools.
Mhm.
And then I went to school, and then I struggled a bit because I didn't understand the language. And then eventually in the fourth grade, I was like, oh, this is easy. And then I just like kicked ass. Like I got rewards. I got awards every year. I got a scholarship to go to secondary school because I had the test. You didn't study for the test. They just like sat you down after lunch one day and they're like, okay, you're doing a test now. Depending on how you do in the test, we're going to choose 1 or 2 people that have a scholarship, one from inside of the primary school, one from outside the primary school. And I got a scholarship from inside of the private schooling system. Um, I attended secondary school free, basically 50% free. And my dad's like, thank you, you saved me $8,000 a year Australian. But that was like in 1980, 1995. So like, they saved a lot of money and they're like, we're gonna buy you a basketball ring. And then I was like, cool, I want to play basketball. So I went and got a basketball ring with my dad. I remember he picked me up from school, he was all happy, and I was like, "Why are you so happy? You're usually sad." And he was like, "Well, I'm gonna take you to like the toy store to get a basketball hoop because we found out that you got a scholarship." Like,
Like
how
one
come
of
you didn't
those
tell
mini
us? And I was,
ones or like a big one?
no, it was a big one, like a real one.
Like a legit one?
Um, yeah, so it was big, it's like 10 feet tall, and I was like, "Whoa!" And then he like paved the court and he poured the concrete, installed it himself. This is another thing I learned how to do. Is like you do stuff yourself because you can't trust anybody else to do it properly. Um,
Ooh,
but
spicy.
he picked me up and he was just like, why didn't you tell us you got a scholarship? And I was like, I don't know, it didn't seem like a big deal. And it's like, it's gonna save us like so many thousands of dollars a year. And I was like, that sounds good. Maybe you should get me a pool as well. No, I was not. That would have been smart. Well, maybe more like you can trust me to do whatever I want, clearly, because you didn't really help me study all that much, and I was like really smart. But then I went into high school, and then like at first in high school you do like the regular things, but then at year 10 you have to choose, and I started to choose art projects. I chose like the hardest form of literature. I chose like the standard STEM subjects because like again that programming, that ego was like you guys study things where you can get a job. So I studied all these
Mm,
subjects: calculus, geometry and trigonometry, English
wow.
literature, history. I did really fucking well in the humanities because I feel like I have
Mhm.
more of like that kind of tendency. Well, like one of my souls, like the Fita soul, is more like literature and art, and then I'd say like the Hathor
Mm,
soul is more like homekeeping and like emotional labor, and then I would say the Sekhmet soul is just like everything. So Sekhmet soul is like, okay, we'll do chemistry, okay, we'll do biology, okay, we'll study mechanical engineering, computer science, and business at university, and like graduate with honors and shit. But like, yeah, like I had to go to university, you had to take another test, and like that point, I was like pretty tired of tests, and I'd started smoking weed and like doing ecstasy and stuff. So I just did it. But like, I ended up in like the 99.65 ish percentile, like the T. So basically, man, I did better than like everybody except for like 0.65% of the population of graduating students that year. So I got to study whatever I wanted at university. And
wow.
then again, the ego came in. I was like, I feel like my souls would have been like, you should study philosophy and psychological sciences and maybe like
Mm,
international relations or something, so you can like
mhm,
manifest some of this stuff to change this shitty ass matrix. But like my ego was like,
mhm.
no, you got to study something like solid. So like I studied engineering because you didn't choose until the second
Oh,
year. And then I studied commerce because it was like, yeah, you need to like make money, right? So like commerce is
yeah.
about money. But I
Uh-huh.
studied commerce and I was like, I understand this shit because I've been doing accounting, bookkeeping for my mom since I was like 8 and filing and shit. So I understood that like people
Wow.
from other countries could come to Australia and get whatever passports they want, and take multiple wives and have multiple families and all the back holes. And I was like, this is bullshit. So I switched to studying computer science. And then I chose mechanical engineering because all the other ones seemed like not that applicable. And I wanted to like be able to do my car up. And then there weren't, the jobs for mechanical engineering are kind of boring because like you
Mm,
study like engines and stuff and
right.
thermodynamics and kinetic energy and all this kind of stuff, but then the jobs are basically like choosing an air conditioning system for a building. And then so I basically used my computer science degree to get a job with Microsoft, and then I started making some real
Mm,
money. And I got to move away from my family, which was like moving away from a war zone.
mm,
And then, basically lots of stuff happened and my ego felt like bigger because it was like, oh, all these things I thought about the world turned out to be right. Like if you study these things and you get a job and you make money, then people are going to
mhm,
respect you more and pretend that they think you're attractive. And then
mhm.
when I started running into roadblocks, part of, like the Sekhmet part was like, yo, you should just give up this shit, homie. And like Hathor was just like, I'm gonna love you anyway. And like Fatah was like, if you quit this stuff, then we can finally start doing real work. But like my ego was like, no. Like this is the stuff that made people respect me and want to date me, so I'm not gonna stop doing it.
So,
Does that does that make sense to you? Like, how does your ego formed?
yes.
How does your programming make it hard for you to give up your shit?
Mm, how does my sorry, I'm just like changing gears because I was prepared to ask you another question.
Oh, well, I said you were gonna talk, but if you want to talk to ask a question, that's
That's
cool.
that's so meta. Will you ask me the question again, please, if you don't mind?
Why? What makes it hard for you to surrender based on like your upbringing?
I would probably say like fear would be like
Oh yeah,
the shortest
my
answer.
parent, my parents don't have any fear. They're fearless.
Is that sarcastic or are you being for real?
Well, I'd say they cover it up very well. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think they really fear. They just like plan.
Interesting. But
They just
hmm,
do shit.
interesting.
So it's like I never got shown like what it's like for like I saw my dad cry, I saw my mom like scream, I saw them like fight each other a lot, and that was maybe you could say expressions of their fear, which I also took on and I had to deprogram myself from.
But you don't think that
But
like planning could come from fear?
I just said it could.
Oh, sorry.
I
I
just
clearly
I
wasn't
just said these
listening
are
very
manifestations of maybe you were triggered. That's all right. That happens in dojo. Um,
I don't think
but
I
you
was
know,
true,
like they well,
but
I mean, this is what I would call being triggered like whenever you're taken out of the present. In the present moment, I was saying that these are manifestations of fear. But which in a, you know, like if you're not, that's that's usually why people can't remember what people say because like they get taken somewhere else. It's not a bad thing. It's normal. Like people call this like being triggered, dysregulated, dissociation. But I'll just say that like often it feels like they're just thinking about something else. Or they just can't remember what happened. I remember saying these things. Please disagree if anybody says that you didn't say that, Nobu. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and it's normal. But anyway, like I was not like they did not role model like just being scared to me, which I think is mostly like what people see as being like in a freeze mode. You could say that they modeled like the version of fear, which looks like fighting,
mhm,
just like punching the matrix in the fucking face.
that makes sense.
Whereas I think a lot of people, like yeah, you were saying like you fear, like how does your fear manifest itself? Like sometimes I see you punching people in the face, not physically, but
I've never I've never physically punched anyone in the face.
well, it's
I've
really
never
good. It feels great.
I've never I'm sure it does. I've never physically fought anybody actually, which is interesting.
And mostly, I prefer to let people try and punch me and then just like kind of dodge them and then they fall over. But yeah, like it's gonna happen, right? Because other people are conditioned to manifest their fear as punching you in the face. So I think this is why, the only container I run constantly in 000 right now is the martial arts lineage. It's like how to not get punched in the face or kicked in the balls. Because people are going to do it to you. And then, like there's also like other manifestations of fear. Like I would say like conditional love,
Mhm.
courting, attachment, freezing. So like how do you deal with someone who's freezing? How do you deal with yourself when you're freezing? How do you deal with other people trying to like cord you? How do you deal with like pre-existing cords so that you can move freely? This is all spa. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm curious, how does your fear manifest itself?
My fear typically manifests itself in freezing and perfectionism, which I would say is a version of freezing.
Right, because it keeps you like you don't do stuff because you're afraid to come out shitty.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So like how do you work with that fear?
Um, I feel like eventually you kind of just have to start doing stuff anyway.
Like deadlines. You give yourself deadlines.
Um,
I feel like
no.
deadlines have the word dead in it, so that just tends to create more fear and procrastination,
Yeah,
right? Like we've talked about this.
I don't really feel like deadlines really work for me.
Reminders.
Eh, eh.
I feel like people confuse reminders and deadlines. Like I have like reminders, right? Like this is what altars are for me. People like to think of them as
Mm,
like magical portals, which is also true, but what they're really saying is like everything you put on your altar is something that's like reminding you of something that at some point you thought was important, which is also why it's, I think, necessary to like clean your altars and reformulate them. But maybe I can ask you this. Do you have altars? You have altars, right?
um, I have had altars on and off
Okay.
throughout my
Well, I have,
life.
I'd say like if you are a physical body in a physical space with other physical bodies, then you have altars because they remind you of things.
I would say that's correct. Yes.
So it's like if you have a sofa, that's an altar. You have a kitchen, that's an altar. If you have a meal, that's an altar, and they're all reminding you of things.
Mm,
So it's like, well, what do you populate your physical space with? What do you not want in your physical space? Or like you don't feel like it would be generative to be reminded of. This also relates to something we've been talking about regarding like moving and also being able to move, right? Like, how do you like have a car altar so you can get in your car, be reminded when you look at your car that you can get away and then get in it, and then it's a mobile altar, so you can drive your altar to another altar. And it's like, where would you go? Like, what would you like to be reminded of when you get in your car to escape your home life, if that's what you want to do? Because your home life is also an altar, and that could be reminding you of like fear and perfectionism. It's like if I want to take a break from fear and perfectionism, where would I go? Where would you go?
mm, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm kind of I feel called to open it up to like the chat. See like where would you go if you wanted to be around things and people which take you out of freeze mode or perfectionist mode? Probably go somewhere kind of messy where it's not perfect so you can see that things are okay, like New York. Maybe go to a place where people are just doing things instead of planning them all the time, like my parents.
Mm.
Nature. So it's what a third space that I enjoy or haven't been to before, like a beach. Yeah, how about that, Anna? Would you go to a beach or nature?
I'm in nature currently, so no.
Okay, nature just reminds you of like your relatives, maybe. So you would go to a city, maybe. Are you Googling places? I can hear you clicking.
No, I'm just clicking on my computer, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question.
Does anybody like to recommend anywhere that Anna should consider going to? I know you've been to San Francisco. I know you've been to Dublin. So you could go back, but let's say like other places. Would you like to take recommendations, Anna? Not
Not
really.
particularly.
Okay. Well, maybe other people can say places that they would go if they wanted to escape fear.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, we can move on, but you know what I'm saying? So, like, those are all altars, and like the things that I have on my altar, I would say are reminders, but they're not deadlines, all right? So there's no pressure. They're just kind of like destinations.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's a good way for me to remember what I'm dedicated to without feeling frozen.
Mm.
And then your phone's an altar too, so like what's on your phone, that's probably gonna remind you of stuff that might keep you stuck or might help you get unstuck.
Right.
Anyway, I feel like you probably have other questions which are less whatever these questions are, if you want to ask them.
Well, it was really this container has been interesting so far because I feel like I mean, I told you that I like came up with a list of questions
Yeah.
and I feel like you mostly answered a lot of them
Hmm.
or like
Does it?
sort of answered a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm kind of tuning in, like without knowing what questions you wrote down. I'm kind of tuning into like the container from your perspective and the container from my perspective, and I'd say my perspective is like pretty far out. Like I'm not really looking at the container, so it's very easy for me to like reorient my perspective to your perspective. And I
Mm,
feel like there is like something in the container which is not yet addressed, which looks like a pearl to me because pearls are kind of like pearly. Like you can't really, there's not much clarity, you can't see through them. So then I'm like,
interesting.
okay, how do I clarify this pearl? Well, I'm gonna run some salt over it. I'm gonna run some titanium manganese, maybe burn it a little bit, see if it wants to open up a little, add some heat. And then I'm like, okay, cayenne, turmeric. And then I'm gonna be like, okay, I see something. And I guess like what's kind of coming up for me is like, like a light bulb. Sometimes light bulbs are pearly, and sometimes
Mhm.
they're not pearly. So you can see this little coil inside them. And it's usually made out of tungsten. Because when you connect a light bulb to a circuit, what you're doing, in my experience, is you're connecting one side of it to a positively charged connector, and then one side of it to like a negatively charged connector. And then Dao Jing says water flows from the high places to the low places. So electricity runs from the positive side through that coil and then into the low side, the negative side. And then that current excites the tungsten, like it gets the electrons moving because the electrons from the wire start bumping into the electrons in the tungsten and they start vibrating. When they vibrate because they're tungsten cations, oh well, the ions are just electrons, but the electrons start rubbing up against the tungsten cations, and then they produce heat. Oh, they produce light and also heat. And then you can see into the light bulb a little bit, and then you can see what's around the light bulb. So I'm going to run some current through that light bulb. I'm going to see what's in that container. I see a few ghosts. I see a few people listening to this container. Their eyes are falling out of their head. They're like, "Why? Okay, but can you talk about aliens?"
Who's saying, "Can you talk about aliens?" What?
I, I mean, I don't want to name them because they might get scared, but I just see some people who might listen to this recording or who might be listening live who might have questions about, okay, like how does this all connect to aliens? Or how does this connect to what's, because I talked a lot about like what's happened to me on Earth. And I feel like maybe a more refined question is like, okay, how did you get involved in like talking to aliens? Is that a question that you had on your list?
It was not a question that I had on my list.
Do you have any questions on your list which sound a little bit like that?
I don't think so.
Does anybody have any questions about why I started talking to like McDonald's? The Golden Arches. How did I go to the Golden Arches? Well, I was stoned, so I can't remember. But I got there somehow. This is before Uber, so I drove myself. I mean, I think that's part of the answer. Like, I started like going to parties when I was like 16, 17. Started like smoking weed, drinking, started hanging out with people. Oh yeah, you joked about wanting to ask me about how I ended up living in like a quasi trap house for a few years.
That's right. That's right.
Do you want to ask me? Do we have time? Like, it's like been about an hour and
I
15 minutes.
know,
You
I
want
don't
to
know, that's the
you
other
want
part that maybe I'm a little bit triggered because I'm like, I feel like I have a lot to close this container, and it's like an
I can
hour.
close it. I can close it. We'll make it an archetypal
No, I
hour.
mean it's
Make
fine,
it.
I just feel like I didn't get to everything
Let's.
that I wanted to,
Well, you said
but
that
it's
I
okay.
saw. Okay, what did I not answer of your mysterious list of questions? Which I'm not sure if it actually exists because you've been clicking on shit. I asked you what you're clicking on, and you're like just clicking.
Oh, I'm
So
clicking sorry, I'm clicking on the dock, so that
okay,
I'm clicking to go back and forth between Discord
okay,
and the list of questions, but it's
okay.
fine. I'm gonna just let go of the list of questions
All
for
right.
now,
So
and
like
you can
you can like
answer the
you
question
can you
about
you
aliens.
can you can link to the doc in the thread and then we can see what the questions are afterwards and then you can prove it because I've told everybody that you don't really have questions. So I'm like I want to give you the chance to clear your name.
That's awfully bold of you to presume.
Well, you're just clicking, bro.
So, why what was your question to yourself? How did you start talking to aliens? That was
No,
the
I
question?
was going to talk about the trap house, but that was only a quasi question. It was only a quasi trap house. I did talk about, I mean, I already kind of talked about how I got to America and didn't talk much about that afterwards.
It's up to you where you wanna take it, I feel
Well,
like.
I would ask a question because like I've been talking a lot and like I could do another coffee, but I'm gonna wait until the hour. So like maybe we'll just see what happens in the next 13 minutes based on your questions or any other questions.
Well, I mean, one of the questions that I mm,
That's very presumptuous of you. It is actually.
what's presumptuous?
You were saying it was presumptuous of me to project that you didn't have questions. Go on.
It was. It was.
I'm
Um,
sorry. I'm sorry.
okay, that's all right. I'm curious. Well, one of the questions that I did, well, you talked like a little bit about being an exorcist,
Mm.
but I was kind of curious, like when you decided to start calling yourself that,
I didn't decide.
or
I
like
was
how that came to be.
I was told.
Okay, so tell us about that,
Like who
if you
told
will.
me?
Yeah, who told you and when?
Well, shit. Basically, like imagine like a lot of stuff happened until like 2019. I was like working, I was making money. I got to work at Etsy. A lot of star seeds. What's a star seed? Ask me why am I like this. I've already answered it in why am I like this, but a lot. I'd say like a lot of people with souls that came from outside of the realm of Earth. Not that they hadn't been here before, but they had spent significant time outside of Earth. So like that was a very germinative time, and then also in the trap house, you get a lot of lost souls. People come like they want some lean, they want some scissor, they want some dexamphetamine, and MDMA, marijuana, psilocybin. So they attract a lot of lost souls, and I encountered a lot of starseeds. And then in 2019, I kind of like I tried to start a clothing company. I'd gone back to work for a company called Primary.com. I was not doing any of these substances at Primary.com because that was a place of work. I don't do any of these explorations while I'm being paid not to do them, which I can't say for most people on the internet. I'd say like most people on the internet getting paid to do something else, but they're just spending their time on the internet. But I was actually doing my job, which also made me a bit of an alien. But I think just as a quick aside, I feel like those people are like often kind of like moonlighting as like Instagram influencers and like Twitter influencers, but they're getting paid for someone else. So they're not very good at what they're doing. And then sort of on the down low, they kind of like unconsciously feel guilty about it. So they talk a lot about what they're supposed to be doing work on, but they don't do it. It just kind of comes through the lens. Like, like some people that call themselves coaches on the internet, they're really just like, do what I did so you can also get paid to do something that's valuable for society, but actually do this other thing which is even more valuable for society, but do it with the same diligence and honesty with which you do the thing that you get paid for, which is not very much. So, like, concretely speaking, I would say that most people are like grifting as coaches, just like they grift at their tech jobs. Um, but a lot of those people don't call themselves exorcists. I'm not sure why I'm talking about them. Well, I think like you could say that I wanted to make sure I was not being lumped in with them. So some of those people call themselves coaches. I don't like the word coaches for other reasons. Like most coaches, I think if you say the word coach, people will be like, oh, like some hairy guy yells at me. Drill sergeant. Which is also
Right.
actually pretty true of most people that actually get paid to be coaches. I can think of a few of those people, but I'm not going to name them because they don't deserve to have their names in my mouth. Um, but I won't name either like the hairless ones with the big tits who are saying factually baseless things on Instagram. Like you can manifest anything you want. They don't call themselves coaches. They call themselves like starseeds or like light workers or what else do they call them, Anna? I know you're on Instagram. Help me out. What do they call themselves?
Uh,
Doctors, psychologists, the holistic healer, or whatever. The holistic psychologist.
so basically, you're saying like coaches or healers is the category
Yeah,
that you're
but I
using.
want to name like some other categories that people put themselves into just to like give you a sense of the landscape I was entering when I was told to start offering services.
I see. Okay. Yeah, light worker.
Priestesses, yeah, that one's big. Like I'm a priestess. Priestess of what? Instagram?
um,
I'm a Sephora priestess. I was I'm qualified to do your makeup, make you
like
pretend to
people
be
call themselves guides.
guys. I'm qualified at Sephora to do your makeup so you look like you know what the fuck you're talking about. Doula, yeah, what the fuck. I mean, a lot of those people are actually helping people give birth, but a lot of them are not. They're just like triggering people, and then they're like, "I showed you the way," and I'm like, "Not really. You just kind of like said what you think I am, which is not necessarily true." And sometimes that could be triggering, right? People like you rock up to a reading and they pull some cards or they like look at your chart and they're like, "You're a light worker," and I'm like, I'm an accountant, bitch." And they're like, "You're a light worker," and I'm like, I feel a little bit confronted right now, and they'll be like, "That's because I showed you your path and you're scared of it." And I'm like, well, maybe it's just not my path and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You just think you do. And that's why I'm triggered because people just keep on projecting inaccurate things at me and they don't give me time to say what I really am, which is an exorcist. Like I exercise people, I dismember people, I like help them. I not only show them their craft because sometimes I have to tell. Like I've said this to you before, right? But like often I'll talk about things, and then people can feel into them without getting triggered because I'm co-regulating them. And that co-regulation is unraveling the stuck energy, and that's exorcism. And then I'm
Mm.
also holding space around that energy so it can reformulate itself in like adaptive ways, which I would call like gardening.
So, how about the part who told you to call yourself an exorcist?
Well, I was told by so I was doing these books which are called psycho-spiritual or psychophysical exercises out of a book called like I think it was called like Alchemy in the Body of Sekhmet. There's one book by someone named like Robin something, and there's another book by someone called Robert Masters. And it's like all these exercises. And I was like fasting on like my born day, and I was also fasting pretty much every day of the week by that point. And I was reading these exercises, and I was recording them, and I was playing them back to myself at the planetary hours of each day. So, like when the sun rises, that's the planetary hour. When the sun sets, planetary hour of the night, because that's when the night starts. And then like you just rotate the hours by seven, and like seven of the hours of the day after sunset sunrise is usually like sun rises at 6 or 5, so it's like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So like midday, and then 7 after that will be sunset, more or less, right? Ish, depending on when sunset is, but usually it's like 5 or 6 hours. So then usually like Mercury night happens on Sunday because if you count basically like if you count 12 hours, which is like 2 times 7 minus 2, then you get Mercury. On Venus Day, you have Mars night. Does that make sense? Kind of. It's called the Chaldean order. It's like the order of the hours as they're named after planets, based on
Mhm.
like a 24-hour day. So what's kind of interesting to me is like it tends to line up with the hours of prayer in some lineages, right? So if you go to an Islamic country, the sun will rise and some dude is just hollering at the top of a minaret. It's just like, oh, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And you're like, oh, I'm so tired. But then they'll do it again at like, I think it's called like Maghrib, right? Which like means the east. So like when the sun's in the east, they'll do it again. They'll be like, hello, Allah, I'm back. Allah Akbar. I have done wudu. Allah Akbar. And then also sometime after, like in the morning, right? And then sometime in the afternoon. And then I think there's a fifth one after sunset. So like at these times, I was basically like listening to recordings of these psychophysical exercises, which were like, okay, now imagine your foot's getting bigger. Now imagine your other foot's getting bigger. Now imagine your hands are getting bigger. Now imagine they're getting small. Now imagine they're different colors. And I would say that like I was running my energy through my body in different ways in order to open up these channels because
Mm.
I'm sort of speed running exorcism from the perspective of light and sound, right? But like, if you wear like noise canceling headphones, like right now I'm talking, and if you wanted to make me shut up, you could just put plugs in your ears. But that's just going to bandage over the frequencies of your body. But if you actually want to unravel those frequencies, you can supply a complementary frequency. Such, people
Mhm.
call this like meta in like Zen traditions, or
Right,
like they
okay.
call them jhanas. So it's like if you're singing like la, they'll be like, "Ah, oh, you gotta be singing that fifth jhana, bro. That's fucking heinous." You'll be like, la. And then like if you like add those things together, then you get like silence. And then in that silence, you could say that that sound wave can be whatever it wants to be, which is healing, instead of being what it thought it had to be, which was like, whoa, right? So you imagine doing that with blue. You imagine doing that with magenta. You imagine doing that with dark blue. You imagine doing that with white, which sort of supplies all the complementary frequencies, but also boosts the ambient frequencies. So it can be a little bit, like one of like these Taoist medicine monks told me that like they did this experiment where they had like all these cancerous cells in a test tube or whatever, and they got like an exorcist, like I would call a Taoist medicine monk an exorcist, to like try and like reduce the cancer. And then they got like a Reiki practitioner, and then they got like poison, like chemo, chemical therapy, and they showed that the chemical therapy reduced the cancerous activity, and they showed that the Taoist medicine monk destroyed all the cancerous cells but left all of the non-cancerous cells, whereas the chemical therapy destroyed all of them, or destroyed some of all of them indiscriminately, right? Like it
Mm.
killed cancerous cells and it killed lively cells.
Right, like, it's just like, yeah, there's no discernment.
Which is also, like when people are like trying to get rid of like invasive plants, they just poison
Yeah,
all of it and they wipe out a
right,
lot of native plants, and then all you have is like
right,
fucking 3 deer, and Anna's like, it's Artemis. It's like, what about the wolves? What about the sheep? What about the understory? What about the other trees? Not to rag on the deer. I'm just saying that's all that's left.
right.
After, because they don't eat the poisonous stuff because they're not stupid. Like Artemis is not stupid. But
Nice.
like they went over to look at the Reiki test tube, and they're like, bro, like your test tube's about to boil over. There's like cancer everywhere. And he was like, what do you mean? I just use Reiki as was taught to me by Grandmaster Reiki guy. And it's like, yeah, like you're just supplying, like it's like putting cancer under a fucking solar lamp. Like if you're trying to grow weed, it makes the weed really big. So the
Mhm.
cancer is just like, please continue giving me light so I can get bigger. And it ends up being a shitty weed plant, you know? because a real weed plant needs the real sun. Um, and that's kind of what I feel like these exercises were giving. It's like that plus like the sunrise. It's red, right? Like in Arabic, they say Sabah al Khair, and then people would say Sabah al Nur, which means like here comes the red one, here comes the light, and that's the light at the sunrise hour, which I was treating my body with to get rid of all the cancerous thought forms and cells. It's called
Mm.
autophagy. And then you take that raw material that comes from the dead cells and you give it back to your body and you can make new life. And then at noon, I don't know what people say at noon, good day, sir. And I was like, it is a good day. And I was giving that energy to my body and then it became a good day. And in the afternoon, whatever, you get it. Um, and I would say at some point, I saw these things which told me that I should start doing Tao Te Ching readings for people. I should start helping people with their metaphysical health by teaching them different exercises, which I also download, right? So, like in my sessions, I'm usually just talking to people to help them bring their awareness to things so I can hear them and then I can supply the complementary frequencies that help them to unravel it so they can grow in quiet, or you could say their own song. Like when no one else is singing, when your dad's not being like, you need to be a good project manager. And your mom's not saying you need to remember everything. It's like, what are you saying to yourself? So, like, when I
Mhm.
supply the complementary frequencies, I'm helping people to tune out all the bullshit, which is what I call containment or co regulation. And then
Mhm.
sometimes I offer things like, I don't tell people you have to be doing this, you need to do this. I'll say, like, sometimes when I feel like this, I find it's useful to set a container so I can tune out all the outside voices and then just work with my spirit. And I teach people how to do this in many different ways. And then most people do not do something unless you say they need to do it. And I don't like to do that because I don't want to be another voice, especially if it's a voice that's coming from my own experience, projecting my experience onto their experience, which is what most coaches do. I say like these are some tools and you can use them. They're there for you. They're always there, but they're not inside your field, so you're not going to pick them up unless it feels aligned for you to do them. And most of the time, it's better for people to find their own tools. But usually, their own tools are like not my tools. So then they find themselves picking up tools that fit for them. But because they're not my tools, they don't think my work's done the work. And I'm like, I'm just not yelling at you, telling you what you need to do. I'm like the only person that's fucking listening to you. And then when you are better at listening to yourself, you think you came up with this shit by yourself, but you would never heard yourself unless I was killing all your demons. That would be a good way to end the podcast, I'd say. Like you would not be able to hear yourself unless I had just slayed all your fucking demons because they would all be like, yo, girl, do this, do that. It's just like when you're able to hear yourself, then you find your own tools. You find your own perspective. And the more that you listen to yourself, the more you become that perspective.
Hmm.
That's also a good time to end the podcast, I think. But then we have to say, like, this, you want to do it? Do you want to close it
Yeah,
out now? Does it feel.
well, okay, alright, alright. I was getting to
Hurry
it.
up, Anna! Hurry up, Anna! You gotta close it out. You
Jesus!
gotta.
Like, what are you in a rush, bro? Like,
I'm just fucking around.
the fuck?
It's like we gotta wrap it up, B. We gotta wrap it up, B.
Okay.
I'm just fucking around. Take your
I
time.
wanted I wanted to thank you
Yeah, thank you.
for your time, um, and your energy, and I wanted to thank people for tuning in, especially if you made
Thank
it to
you.
the end. Um,
I think everybody
and
did, right?
yeah, well, I just mean like,
Oh, recording.
the recording. But yeah, thank you
Thanks.
for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the podcast,
What's the
um,
podcast called?
the Broom Radio.
How do you
Thank you for
support the Broom Radio?
through Buy Me a Coffee. There will be a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description um,
Yeah, boy.
of this episode.
We
So,
also accept matcha
so pay us. No,
and
seriously,
money.
we
So
appreciate your support.
buymeacoffee.com/the Broom Radio. If you want to become a
Yes.
member, you can hit
Oh, that's right.
buymeacoffee.com/the Broom Radio/membership. We
Hmm.
have one tier right now, which is $5 a month, which gets you into the broom and allows you to text and also unmute if you want to cut me off. And
Beautiful.
then if you want to host your own containers and then have some of them published on the podcast to get your container some more awareness
Mhm.
in the jungle, because it's
Mhm.
hard out there to get people's attention, but we
Yeah.
are already getting people's attention because we swear and we say things, and we're interviewing like Childish Gambino. MIA. It's like
Hopefully in the future, yes.
why you be leaning out of the car like that? MIA. Bjork.
Alright. Thank you. Peace.
Um, yeah. Thank you all, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Anna. Peace.
Thank you.